The morning of Tuesday, October 14th, didn't break with a thunderclap. It began with a deceptive, heavy stillness that felt like the air itself had turned to lead. I was sitting at my scarred oak kitchen table, the steam from my third cup of coffee curling into the sunlight, scrolling mindlessly through emails that seemed so important at the time. Then a strange, hollow ache, not a pain, but a ghostly presence, began to bloom in the very center of my chest, slowly unfurling like a dark flower and creeping up into the hinge of my left jaw. I rubbed my face, thinking I'd just slept poorly or that my teeth were acting up again, but then the weight arrived. It felt as if an invisible giant was pressing a warm, heavy palm directly onto my sternum, squeezing the air out of my lungs in slow, agonizing increments. I stood up, my heart fluttering like a trapped bird against a window pane, and tried to pace the linoleum floor. "It's just indigestion," I whispered to the empty room, my voice sounding thin and alien. I swallowed an antacid, the chalky tablet sticking in my throat, but the relief never came. Instead, a sudden, terrifying sense of impending doom washed over me, a cold, primitive realization from the lizard brain that the machinery was failing. The transition from person to patient happened in a heartbeat of pure, unadulterated panic. I remember the frantic fumbling for my keys, the way the metal bit into my palm, and the blur of the drive where every red light felt like a personal death sentence. My skin had turned a ghostly, translucent gray, and a cold, oily sweat began to coat my forehead, stinging my eyes. By the time I staggered through the sliding glass doors of the ER, the dull ache had sharpened into a white-hot band of iron cinching my ribs. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The casual chatter of the triage desk vanished the moment the nurse saw my face. "Chest pain," she called out, and suddenly I was being swept away on a gurney, the ceiling lights flashing overhead like a strobe light in a nightmare. I remember the sharp, metallic tang of the sublingual nitroglycerin under my tongue and the frantic beep, beep, beep of the EKG monitor, a frantic rhythm that seemed to be screaming for help. "We're losing the rhythm," someone shouted, and for a split second the world tilted into a terrifying silent gray. The sadness hit me then, a crushing wave of regret for the "I love yous" I hadn't said that morning, and the mundane life I was suddenly terrified to leave behind. Then came the electric jolt of the twilight room, the cath lab. It was a forest of stainless steel and monitors, a place of cold science and desperate hope. I felt the sharp, invasive sting of the local anesthetic in my wrist, and then a surreal, sliding sensation as the catheter threaded its way through my radial artery, a literal lifeline traveling toward my heart. "You're going to feel a flush of heat," the surgeon murmured, and suddenly liquid fire raced through my chest as the contrast dye mapped out the wreckage. I watched the monitor, seeing the dark river of my blood come to a dead stop at a jagged black blockage, the culprit. Then, the miracle. I felt a sudden, sharp pop of internal pressure, a physical release so profound it felt like coming up for air after being underwater for 3 minutes. "Balloons up," the doctor said, his voice now calm and triumphant. The crushing weight vanished instantly, replaced by a rush of oxygen so sweet it made my eyes sting with tears of pure, soaring relief. The monitor's frantic screaming settled into a steady, melodic thump-thump, the most beautiful song I had ever heard. The aftermath was a roller coaster of a different kind, a journey through the quiet, fragile days of recovery where the world felt too loud and my body felt like glass. The first night home was the hardest. The silence of my bedroom was deafening, and I lay awake for hours, counting every single heartbeat, terrified that the rhythm might falter again. I cried over a bowl of oatmeal, overwhelmed by the sheer ridiculous gift of being able to taste cinnamon again. There were days of dark frustration, staring at the handful of beta blockers and blood thinners that were now my permanent companions, feeling like a betrayal had occurred between my mind and my muscles. But then came the first walk to the end of the driveway, and then to the park, where the sight of a simple oak tree against a blue sky felt like a masterpiece I had never truly looked at before. The journey from the brink of silence back into the noise of life had stripped away everything trivial. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a man who had heard the clock stop and had been given the chance to wind it back up. Every breath now felt intentional, every heartbeat a conscious choice. And as I stood in the sun, the lingering fear finally evaporated, replaced by a fierce, burning gratitude for the messy, beautiful, and miraculous second act I was about to begin.